Have you ever felt that, as you elevate your vibration and grow spiritually, you begin to distance yourself from people you once deeply loved? This phenomenon can be unsettling, but it is a crucial part of the personal transformation process. In this video, we will reveal why this happens, exploring Carl Jung's teachings on how our relationships change as our energy and consciousness evolve. Could it be that this distancing is not a loss, but a step toward a more authentic version of yourself? Join us on a revealing journey and discover how this process, though painful, is actually a sign of your spiritual growth and a call to embrace your true self. Get ready for a deep reflection that will change your perspective on love, energy, and personal growth. Jung proposed that the human psyche operates through a dynamic balance between conscious and unconscious energies. Elevating your vibration involves transforming these energies into more conscious states by integrating repressed or unacknowledged aspects of yourself. This creates a noticeable shift in how you interact with the world. For Jung, this process lies at the heart of the individuation, a unique journey toward the complete integration of the self, transformation, and its impact on relationships. During this journey, you begin to shed unconscious patterns that once directed your decisions and emotions. This can manifest as freedom from reactive behaviors, overcoming deep fears, and developing a more authentic understanding of your desires and values. However, this process is not without consequences. As you change, the relationships and dynamics that once fit your old vibration may become uncomfortable or irrelevant. When you elevate your vibration, you may notice that you no longer feel affinity with certain people or situations. This phenomenon is not a conscious rejection, but a reflection of the energetic incompatibility that arises when your psychic state transforms. Elevating your vibration also leads you to connect with new perspectives and values. You may develop a greater appreciation for the deeper meaning of life, driving you to surround yourself with people and experiences that reflect your new way of being. Energy dynamics and human connections. The relationship between psychic energy and human relationships is crucial in this context. According to Jung, our connections are rooted in the exchange of psychic energy, a powerful but invisible dynamic. When your vibration changes, you alter this energetic flow, impacting not only how you relate to others, but also how they perceive your presence. These transformations, though natural, can lead to periods of solitude as you find a new balance with those who share your path. Jung held that our relationships are like mirrors, reflecting aspects of our psyche that we cannot always see for ourselves. These connections function as a stage on which our unconscious projections come to life. Relationships as mirrors. According to Jung, we project repressed emotions, hidden desires, and even parts of our shadow, those aspects of ourselves we neither recognize nor accept, onto others. Consequently, the people we are closest to help us, consciously or unconsciously, confront these projections. When a person elevates their vibration, their relationship with these mirrors changes significantly. Elevating your vibration involves bringing the unconscious to light and integrating aspects of the shadow that others previously absorbed. Many relationships are sustained precisely by these unconscious dynamics, where both parties play complementary roles. When one person begins to transform their vibration, the other may feel lost, disconnected, or even threatened. This happens because one person's change forces the other to confront their own projections and, in many cases, aspects of themselves they would rather ignore. Authenticity over comfort. Elevating your vibration often leads you to value authenticity over comfort. Relationships rooted in old patterns, such as attachment, the need for external validation, or emotional dependency, may start to feel limiting. For instance, a friendship founded on constant complaining or competition may begin to seem trivial or exhausting once you start vibrating at a higher level of consciousness. In this case, the mirror no longer reflects what you need to see because you have already integrated that part of yourself. This phenomenon is not a rejection of the other person, but a sign that the purpose of that connection has shifted or been fulfilled. Opening new doors. This also opens the door to forming new relationships with people who resonate with your current vibration. Relationships that are not based on unconscious projections, but on deeper mutual understanding and respect. The process of moving away from certain relationships can be painful, especially when these connections have been important in your life. However, Jung reminds us that personal growth always involves some degree of loss, a necessary sacrifice to move toward a more authentic life aligned with your true self. At the same time, relationships that survive this process often transform into something more genuine and enriching as they shed the unconscious dynamics that once limited them. Compassion in transition. Understanding relationships as mirrors also allows us to approach these transitions with compassion, both for ourselves and others. Recognizing that each person in our life has played a role in our growth helps us let go with gratitude rather than resentment. Jung invites us to view these connections not as failures, but as milestones on the path to individuation. Each served its purpose at the right time. In this sense, moving away from certain people does not necessarily mean abandoning love or connection, but rather redefining them in ways that respect your evolution and that of the other person. This can be a painful process, but also a profoundly liberating one, as it allows you to continue advancing toward a more conscious and fulfilling life. The collective unconscious and archetypes. One of Jung's most revolutionary concepts, the collective unconscious, is a deep level of the psyche shared by all humanity. This vast reservoir of archetypal images and universal patterns acts as an invisible network connecting our individual experiences with those of all humankind. In our relationships, the collective unconscious manifests as expectations, roles, and behaviors that seem to arise naturally, but are deeply rooted in our shared heritage. For example, many relationships operate within archetypes of the collective unconscious, such as the caregiver, the hero, or even the villain. These archetypal figures shape how we perceive ourselves and others. If two people are caught in an archetypal pattern, like the dynamic of savior and victim, their relationship will be defined by that role until one of them questions it. Awakening beyond archetypes. When someone elevates their vibration, they begin to see beyond these collective archetypes and question the dynamics they once accepted as natural. This process can feel like an awakening, where you realize you have been playing a role that no longer resonates with you. For example, someone who has always assumed the role of caregiver may begin to recognize how this role has limited them, preventing them from expressing their own needs. This change affects not only the individual elevating their vibration, but also those around them. Relationships dependent on collective roles may become tense or dysfunctional when one person decides to step out of the script. This can lead to conflict or separation, as not everyone is willing or ready to leave behind the dynamics they find comfortable or familiar. However, this transformation is a crucial step toward building relationships that are more conscious, balanced, and aligned with the individual's growth. However, this distancing is not always permanent. As a person elevates their vibration, they can inspire those around them to do the same. While some relationships dissolve, others can transform into more authentic and conscious connections. This occurs when both individuals are willing to release patterns from the collective unconscious and build a relationship based on their true essence rather than predefined roles. The collective unconscious also explains why certain relationships feel inevitable or destined. Deep connections often feel this way because they activate shared archetypes resonating at profound levels of the psyche. However, Jung reminds us that true individuation requires moving beyond the influence of the collective unconscious and building relationships that reflect who we truly are, not merely the patterns we've inherited. Elevating your vibration allows you to explore this terrain with greater clarity, enabling you to identify dynamics rooted in the collective unconscious and consciously decide whether you wish to continue participating in them. This level of awareness not only transforms your relationships, but also your relationship with yourself, freeing you from the need to fit into molds that do not reflect your true nature. Archetypes and personal transformation. Archetypes such as the sage, the hero, the lover, and the shadow are universal patterns of the collective unconscious that structure and give meaning to our human experiences. During the process of personal transformation and vibration elevation, these archetypes not only emerge in our psyche, but also guide our development toward a more conscious and fulfilled state. According to Carl Jung, these archetypes are not merely metaphors, but active psychic forces that influence how we live, make decisions, and relate to the world. In personal transformation, some archetypes become more prominent while others begin to fade. For example, the hero archetype is often the first to activate, representing the need to face challenges, overcome fears, and step out of the comfort zone to conquer a new level of consciousness. However, This archetype can also lead to unbalanced relationships if we feel compelled to save others, or conversely, to be rescued. Through individuation, we learn to balance the energy of the hero and allow other archetypes, such as the sage, to emerge more clearly. The sage archetype, on the other hand, symbolizes the integration of knowledge and introspection. It teaches us to value inner learning and reflection, enabling us to view our relationships from a broader perspective. For instance, someone embodying the sage may begin to question relational dynamics previously taken for granted, such as emotional dependency or perpetual conflict. The evolution of the lover archetype. The lover archetype, associated with the desire for deep connection and passion, also evolves during this process. When your vibration elevates, the lover no longer seeks superficial connections or relationships driven by the need to fill an emotional void. Instead, it begins to seek authentic relationships aligned with your true self. This shift may mark the end of relationships that once seemed satisfying, but were actually built on fragile foundations, such as attachment or the need for validation. Integrating the shadow. The shadow, perhaps the most challenging archetype in the process of transformation, represents the darker and repressed aspects of our personality, those we prefer to ignore or project onto others. In relationships, the shadow often manifests as judgments, conflicts, or toxic dynamics. Elevating your vibration does not eliminate the shadow, but initiates its integration. This can be uncomfortable, as it involves recognizing how your insecurities and wounds have influenced your connections with others. However, by integrating the shadow, you free yourself from unconscious patterns that limited your ability to relate authentically. The impact of archetypes on self-perception and relationships. Archetypes not only influence personal relationships, but also shape how you perceive yourself. For example, connecting with the hero may give you greater confidence to face difficult changes, such as distancing yourself from people who no longer align with you. At the same time, the sage reminds you that not all relationships must end in conflict. Some can transform if both parties are willing to evolve together. Not all relationships survive this transformation. Those deeply rooted in dysfunctional archetypal patterns, such as the savior and victim dynamic, may collapse when one person decides to step out of their role. This misalignment does not imply fault on either side, but signals that the purpose of the relationship has shifted. Navigating transitions with grace. A key aspect of this process is the ability to accept these transitions with grace and without resentment. Jung emphasized that working with archetypes is not a linear path, but a continuous dance between light and shadow, between the conscious self and the collective unconscious. Each stage of the process leads to greater self-knowledge, allowing you to create connections that not only reflect your current vibration, but also inspire you to continue growing. A continuous journey. Finally, personal transformation guided by archetypes is not a destination, but an ongoing journey. As you evolve, new archetypes emerge to guide you through different stages of life. For example, while the hero may be crucial at the start of your journey, the sage and the lover may take center stage in later phases, helping you find balance and purpose in your relationships and life. This constant process of change is what makes human relationships dynamic and profoundly meaningful. The shadow's role in relationships. The shadow, as a central archetype in Jungian psychology, represents everything we fail to recognize or accept about ourselves. These repressed aspects of our personality do not disappear. Rather, they surface in our relationships, often causing conflict and tension. When we project our shadow onto others, we may blame them for flaws or behaviors that actually reflect parts of ourselves we don't want to face. For instance, someone who represses their need for control may attract dominant partners, perpetuating a dynamic where they feel victimized. This cycle repeats until that person recognizes and accepts their own desire for power or autonomy. By working to integrate the shadow, you begin to dismantle these unconscious dynamics, leading to profound transformation in how you relate to others. Elevating your vibration makes you more aware of your projections, empowering you to take responsibility for your own emotions and actions. This not only frees you from unnecessary conflicts, but also allows you to see people for who they are, rather than what they represent to you. For example, you may stop blaming a friend for their lack of support, and instead recognize your own need for external validation. The importance of shadow work. Integrating the shadow involves confronting aspects of yourself that you have preferred to ignore, such as fears, insecurities, or less noble impulses. However, this work is essential for elevating your vibration and forming more authentic relationships. As you integrate the shadow, you stop attracting toxic dynamics and begin to surround yourself with people who reflect your newfound clarity and inner balance. This integration not only transforms your current relationships, but also redefines how you choose connections in the future. Rather than unconsciously seeking partners to mirror your wounds, you start attracting relationships that foster mutual growth and genuine support. This shift does not mean relationships will be perfect, but they will be more conscious and less reactive. The impact of the shadow on relationships. The impact of the shadow on relationships can also be seen in how you handle disagreements. When you are in tune with your shadow, you're less likely to react impulsively or defensively and more likely to respond with understanding and compassion. This not only improves the quality of your relationships, but also strengthens your connection with yourself, as you act from a place of integrity and self-awareness. Lastly, Jung emphasizes that integrating the shadow is not a one-time process, but an ongoing journey. There will always be new aspects of your psyche that emerge as you grow and face new challenges. However, each step toward integration brings you closer to a state of greater authenticity and emotional freedom, allowing you to build relationships that are not only satisfying, but also deeply enriching. Synchronicity, a central concept in Jung's work. Synchronicity, a central concept in Carl Jung's work, describes the occurrence of meaningful coincidences that do not have a direct causal relationship, but are deeply connected on symbolic and psychological levels. Jung observed that these phenomena tend to manifest more intensely during periods of personal transformation, when conscious and unconscious energies are in motion. Elevating your vibration is one of these moments of change, and as a result, synchronicity can play an important role in the evolution of your relationships. Imagine you are going through a period of internal growth. You feel more connected to yourself, you've started exploring new ideas and values, and suddenly you begin to notice certain people entering your life seemingly by chance. These individuals often resonate deeply with your new way of being, offering support, inspiration, or knowledge that seems to come at the perfect moment. This is not an accident. According to Jung, synchronicities act as indicators that you are aligning with a higher state of consciousness. On the other hand, synchronicity does not only manifest in the arrival of new connections, but also in the way old relationships begin to fade. These separations are often not dramatic or conflictual. They simply stop involving meaningful encounters or conversations. Perhaps a close friend you used to see regularly no longer seems available, or a social group that once felt connected to you begins to lose its appeal. Although these disconnections can be painful at first, they are a sign that your vibration is no longer in alignment with those people or situations. A classic example of synchronicity. A classic example of synchronicity during personal transformation is the encounter with a mentor. This occurs when, amidst a process of personal change, a figure appears offering guidance or wisdom at just the right moment. This mentor could be a friend, a teacher, a therapist, or even someone you've just met. Jung observed that these experiences are not random, but reflect a deeper pattern in the collective psyche, where the people necessary for your growth tend to appear at the right time. However, synchronicities are not always experienced positively at first. For example, you might experience situations that force you to confront breakups or conflicts. Suppose a series of seemingly random events leads to a discussion with a close friend. Although uncomfortable, this conflict could be a manifestation of synchronicity, pushing you to examine relational dynamics that are no longer healthy. From this perspective, even difficult experiences can be seen as opportunities to advance toward a life more aligned with your current vibration. Patterns and symbols. It is common during periods of transformation to begin noticing repetitive patterns in your environment, such as symbols or numbers that seem to follow you throughout your days. Although they might appear insignificant, Jung argued that these signals carry subjective meaning that only you can interpret. For instance, you might notice that certain numbers appear every time you are considering an important change, or you might dream repeatedly about a particular place that later proves to be pivotal in your transformation process. These experiences are not mere coincidences, but expressions of the dialogue between your conscious mind and your unconscious, inviting you to pay attention to what truly matters. Synchronicity also challenges you to accept that human relationships do not always have to be explained in rational or causal terms. Instead of seeking linear logic behind why certain people come or go from your life, synchronicity invites you to trust that everything happens for a deeper reason, even if it is not immediately evident. This shift in perspective can help you let go of relationships or dynamics that no longer serve you, without clinging to resentment or the need for explanations. As you continue elevating your vibration, synchronicities become not only more frequent, but also clearer. You may begin to notice that the people you encounter have similar interests, values, and goals to yours. These new connections tend to be free of the projections and unconscious patterns that characterized previous relationships, making them more authentic and enriching. Ultimately, synchronicities teach you to trust in the natural flow of life rather than forcing relationships or resisting change. You can adopt an attitude of openness and curiosity toward the connections that arise and those that fade away. Jung viewed synchronicity as a reminder that, although life often seems chaotic, there is an underlying order connecting all things. By aligning with this order through elevating your vibration, you not only transform your relationships, but also the way you experience the world. Resistance to change. Although necessary for personal growth, change often generates resistance, both within ourselves and in those around us. Carl Jung understood that the human psyche is fundamentally conservative. Even when we desire to evolve, parts of our unconscious cling to the status quo because it represents safety and familiarity. This internal conflict also reflects in our relationships. As you elevate your vibration, it is likely that those closest to you may react with discomfort, confusion, or even rejection. For instance, imagine you've started working on your emotional development, freeing yourself from patterns of dependence or the need for validation. A relationship with a friend or partner that was once rooted in these patterns might begin to waver. The other person may resist this change, feeling insecure or threatened by your newfound independence. This resistance does not necessarily mean the relationship is doomed. However, it does suggest that it may need to be reevaluated or redefined. Resistance to change can also come from within yourself. Even if you desire growth, you may fear losing the people you love or confronting loneliness. This fear is natural, and according to Jung, comes from the tension between your conscious self, which seeks to move forward, and your unconscious, which prefers to maintain the familiar. This internal struggle can manifest as doubt, guilt, or even sabotage as you attempt to make changes. During emotional breakups that arise during this process, it is important to remember that pain does not signify error. Jung emphasized that real growth often involves facing and enduring suffering. Letting go of relationships no longer aligned with your vibration is not an act of selfishness, but of honesty toward yourself and others. Forcing a relationship that no longer resonates only prolongs pain. Resistance to change does not only manifest in the people around you, but also in the social environment you share with them. Family dynamics, friend circles, and communities. Family dynamics, friend circles, and communities often operate within a framework of implicit expectations. When you begin to break these expectations due to personal growth, the system may react to try to maintain the previous balance. This can include criticism, attempts at emotional manipulation, or even isolation. For example, if you decide to prioritize your emotional well-being by leaving behind patterns of personal sacrifice, others may accuse you of being selfish. This is not always an act of malice. Many times it is the result of others' fears in facing their own need for change. In these cases, it is crucial to remember that the resistance of others is not necessarily a reflection of you, but of their discomfort with transformation. Emotional breakups and their role in personal growth. Emotional breakups that arise during this process are undoubtedly one of the most difficult parts of personal growth. When a relationship ends, whether a friendship, romantic relationship, or family bond, it can feel like a profound loss. This pain should not be minimized, but Jung reminds us that it is part of the journey toward individuation. These breakups often mark the end of one phase of your life and the beginning of another. It is important to understand that not all relationships must end in conflict. Some disconnections are natural and quiet. For instance, you may notice that communication with certain people becomes less frequent, but without resentment. This type of separation may reflect mutual acceptance that your paths have taken different directions. On the other hand, some relationships encounter tensions that cannot be resolved immediately. In these cases, Jung suggested the importance of working with the concept of the tension of opposites. This involves accepting that two people can have different needs, values, or paths without one of them being wrong. Instead of attempting to resolve the tension immediately, you can allow time and reflection to guide the next step. To navigate these emotional breakups, it is essential to turn to self-knowledge and compassion. Ask yourself, am I making this decision from a place of self-love and authenticity? Am I willing to allow the people in my life to have their own process, even if it means our paths may separate? These questions can help you navigate the pain of separations without falling into resentment or guilt. Change as an opportunity. Once you accept that change is inevitable and that relationships evolve along with your growth, you can begin to see breakups as opportunities rather than failures. This does not mean that you should ignore the pain you feel, but rather that you can view it as a signal that you are moving towards something more aligned with your authentic self. Jung firmly believed that crises are moments of transformative potential, leading to greater awareness and fulfillment. It is also important to note that not all relationships that encounter resistance must end. In many cases, personal growth can inspire those around you to reflect on their own journeys. If both parties are willing to do the necessary work, a relationship that appeared destined to crumble can transform into something much deeper and more meaningful. This requires open communication, empathy, and a willingness from both sides to adapt to change. Finally, emotional breakups are a reminder of the fluid nature of life. Jung believed that individuation is a continuous process and that growth never stops. Every relationship, whether it ends or evolves, serves a purpose on your journey toward wholeness. By allowing yourself to let go of what no longer resonates with you, you create space for new connections that reflect your authenticity and your current vibration. Individuation becoming your true self. The central concept in Jung's psychology is individuation, the process by which a person becomes their true self. This is not about becoming independent from others, but about integrating all aspects of your psyche, both conscious and unconscious, to reach a state of wholeness. This journey toward individuation involves a constant balance between separation and union, both within yourself and in your relationships with others. Within the context of relationships, individuation means freeing yourself from dynamics that no longer reflect your true essence. This process does not occur abruptly. It is gradual and often painful at first. You may feel internal conflict between your desire to maintain connections with certain individuals and your need to stay true to your personal growth. This tension is part of the process, as it challenges you to reflect on which relationships support your individuation and which ones hinder it. Separation in individuation is not simply about physical distance, but about letting go of expectations and unconscious patterns that keep these connections in their previous state. For instance, if you've always assumed the role of caregiver in your relationships, individuation might lead you to set clearer boundaries, even if that means facing resistance or misunderstanding. Letting go of inauthentic roles can be liberating, but also challenging, as it forces others to evaluate how they interact with you. However, individuation does not imply permanent isolation. Instead, the process also involves a profound ability to connect with others from a more authentic and conscious place. As you integrate more aspects of yourself, you become capable of forming relationships that are not based on dependency or projection, but on mutual respect, understanding, and support for growth. Integration of opposites. One of the most significant stages in individuation is the integration of opposites within yourself, such as light and shadow, masculine and feminine, rational and intuitive. This internal integration is reflected externally in your relationships. For example, by accepting your own insecurities, you are less likely to project them onto others, reducing conflict and fostering more open and honest communication. However, individuation is not a linear process. Along the way, you will face setbacks, doubts, and moments of solitude. Jung believed that these challenges are inevitable and necessary because they force you to confront parts of yourself that still need integration. In relationships, these moments may manifest as temporary breakups or tensions that seem insurmountable. Nevertheless, if both parties are committed to their own growth, these challenges can become catalysts for deeper, more meaningful connections. Ultimately, individuation is an act of love toward yourself and others. By becoming your most authentic self, you free yourself from patterns that limited your potential and inspire those around you to do the same. While this does not guarantee that all relationships will survive the process, those that endure are often transformed into something much richer and more satisfying. Individuation also teaches you to accept the natural flow of life. Some relationships are meant to be temporary, while others evolve with you over time. Instead of clinging to what was, you can embrace what is, knowing that every connection, whether brief or long-lasting, has contributed to your journey toward wholeness. Spiritual awakening. The spiritual awakening, closely linked to Carl Jung's concept of individuation, represents a profound shift in how you perceive and relate to life. This awakening is not a single event but an ongoing process of expanding consciousness and connecting with deeper aspects of your being. The solitude of spiritual awakening. However, as this process unfolds, one of the most common experiences is solitude. Not a forced loneliness, but a natural disconnection from people, situations, and dynamics that no longer resonate with your new perspective. In the early stages of spiritual awakening, it is common to feel bewildered. Perhaps you once had a strong social circle, a stable routine, and relationships that seemed fulfilling. But as your vibration rises, you begin to perceive that many of these connections were based on superficial patterns or unconscious needs. This shift in perspective does not mean that those relationships were bad. They simply no longer align with who you are now. The solitude accompanying spiritual awakening can feel like a painful void. Jung understood this phenomenon as an inevitable phase on the journey toward individuation. As you leave old dynamics behind, you face a period of uncertainty where meaningful connections have not yet arrived to fill the space you've created. During this time, you may question whether you've made the right decisions, or if the cost of personal growth is too high. Nevertheless, this period of solitude has a crucial purpose. According to Jung, it is in solitude where we find our true self, when we are no longer distracted by others' expectations or trapped in patterns of external validation. Solitude gives you the opportunity to listen to your inner voice. This process can be uncomfortable, as it forces you to confront aspects of yourself that you have ignored or repressed. However, it is profoundly transformative because it allows you to establish a more authentic connection with your essence. Solitude is also a space to integrate the lessons of your spiritual awakening. For example, you can reflect on the dynamics you once accepted in your relationships and realize how they contributed to your growth. Perhaps you once constantly sought others' approval, but now you recognize that your value does not depend on external validation. This level of self-awareness prepares you to form deeper and healthier connections in the future. The feeling of not belonging. Another aspect of spiritual awakening is the sensation of not fitting into your usual social circles. Jung described this experience as a form of separation from the collective unconscious, the reservoir of universal patterns that many people follow without question. By raising your vibration, you disconnect from these collective dynamics and begin to operate from a place of greater authenticity. This can make you feel different or even misunderstood, but it is also a sign that you are advancing toward a life more aligned with yourself. As you progress through your journey, you may also begin to notice a change in the type of people you attract into your life. Relationships based on unconscious patterns tend to fade, while deeper, more meaningful connections begin to emerge. These new relationships are not always numerous, but they tend to be much more enriching because they are based on mutual understanding and genuine support. It is important to mention that the solitude of spiritual awakening does not mean permanent isolation. It is a transitional phase that prepares the ground for a new way of relating to others. During this time, it is helpful to practice self-care and seek activities that nourish your soul, such as meditation, writing, or spending time in nature. These practices not only help you process the pain of solitude, but also strengthen your connection with yourself. Moreover, Jung emphasized the importance of patience in this process. You cannot rush spiritual awakening or force new connections to arrive. Instead, you must trust in the natural flow of life and allow the relationships that truly resonate with you to develop in their own time. This approach not only reduces anxiety, but also helps you value connections that emerge organically. Spiritual awakening teaches you that solitude is not a punishment, but an opportunity. It is a reminder that personal growth is not always comfortable, but it is always necessary. By accepting this period as an essential part of your evolution, you can learn to embrace solitude as a space of transformation rather than fearing it as a loss. This shift in perspective allows you to move forward with confidence toward a future full of relationships that reflect your true self. Reconciliation with relationships. After going through the process of transformation, detachment, and solitude, the time comes to reconcile with your relationships from a new perspective. This is not an act of returning to the past, but of establishing a balance that reflects who you are now. For Carl Jung, reconciliation does not mean returning to old dynamics, but creating connections rooted in authenticity, understanding, and mutual respect. One of the first things you may notice during this phase is that some relationships may reignite from a healthier place. Perhaps people from whom you distanced yourself begin to see your change as an inspiration for their own growth. This does not mean that all conflicts will magically disappear, but there will be a new level of communication and understanding that did not exist before. For example, a friend who once reacted with resistance to your transformation may now approach you with curiosity and a willingness to learn. However, not all relationships will reconnect, and that is okay. Reconciliation does not imply forcing connections that no longer make sense in your life. Instead, you can practice forgiveness, both toward others and toward yourself. Jung viewed forgiveness not as an act of forgetting the past, but as a means of freeing yourself from the emotional burden that conflicted relationships can leave behind. By releasing resentment, you allow yourself to move forward without carrying emotional weight. New connections and shared values. During this stage, a new type of relationship begins to emerge, one based on shared values, common interests, and aligned vibrations. These connections tend to be less numerous but far more meaningful. You may find yourself surrounded by people who support your growth and inspire you to keep moving forward. These relationships are not shaped by need or control, but by freedom and mutual respect. Reconciliation with your relationships also means learning to set healthy boundaries. Jung believed that authentic love can't thrive without mutual respect, which includes honoring your own needs and desires. Boundaries are not walls, but a way to protect your energy and ensure that your relationships remain safe spaces for growth. For instance, if in the past you felt pressured to please others, you can now learn to say no without guilt, knowing that doing so strengthens your relationships instead of weakening them. Ultimately, reconciliation at this stage is not just about others, but also about how you relate to yourself. By accepting who you are and how you've changed, you can engage with others from a place of authenticity. This not only enhances the quality of your relationships, but also draws in people who align with your current vibration. A dynamic and ongoing process. The balance you achieve during this stage is dynamic, not fixed. As you continue to evolve, so will your relationships. Some will deepen over time, while others may naturally fade. The key is to trust the process and your ability to build a supportive network that reflects your true self and purpose. Jung taught us that relationships serve as both a mirror and a pathway to self-knowledge. By reconciling your connections, you are not only closing a chapter, but also opening the door to a new way of living and loving that is more in tune with your authentic self. This balance is not the end of your journey, but a reminder that personal growth is an ongoing cycle, always guiding you toward higher levels of awareness and connection.